people yet. The committee, the COVID task force committee that we have at Temple Sinai has met, and beginning in March, we will be able to have some people who have to register, and of course the preference will be for those who are vaccinated, and if it's a smaller group, we'll be here in the Abrams Chapel, say 20 or so, and if it's larger than that, we'll be in the Zwerin Sanctuary. But still, the reason why we've been broadcasting the service from the chapel is we want you to feel that you're here. And that just takes a little imagination. So just imagine that you're in this beautiful space and you're surrounded by friends and you see your loved ones and you can reach out and touch someone and smile at someone and know that we're together. So just put your head around that and start to think about how we can celebrate Shabbat, bringing in this day of rest.
We're on page 121. A source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Let us take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this virtual sanctuary or enter virtually, all who bring the offerings of their heart, their true mote. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
They're dancing around the whole chapel. Now they're climbing on the furniture. It's Shabbat Terumah, in which we'll be reading from the 25th chapter of Exodus, and Susan is going to chant that beautifully tomorrow. And there's also a special section that we're going to read from the 25th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. Why? Because it's Shabbat Zachor, and I'll read that tomorrow morning also. Shabbat Zachor begins with Zachor Asher Asa Lecha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you when you were straggling out of Egypt and they attacked us. Now, we read that special Torah portion, Shabbat Zachor, the 25th chapter of Deuteronomy, on the Sabbath that precedes Purim. And Purim, of course, celebrates our rescue, our redemption, because there was a queen. What was her name?
Esther, or Hadassah.
Exactly. It wasn't just Esther. Esther was her common name there. Her Hebrew name was?
Hadassah.
Hadassah. So on this Purim celebration, we celebrate Purim, Hadassah, of Esther, of Mordecai, and we were able to overcome the evil designs of the guy that was supposed to mention his name, not Voldemort, but the other guy. And we recognize that there are heroes among us. And Hadassah, who was an orphan, who was a part of the refugees that were in Babylon and in Persia, she was the one who helped us overcome. And so this Shabbat is not only Shabbat Terumah and Shabbat Zachor, because of that special section, the Sabbath right before Purim, we're also going to have a special reading later on to honor Hadassah. And Hadassah is a very, very important organization, which again is made up of incredible women. And this one is a life member of Hadassah. And it has helped to really to bring health and education and support to people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people over the century, from the heroes among us, especially the Jewish women who've become members of Hadassah. So on that special note, we think of what's going on in this Shabbat, in which we think of the heroes among us, we think of the holiness among us. And so let's go ahead and continue with Lechun Ranana, the beginning of the Kabbalat Shabbat, to bring in that spirit. We're on page 130.
Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Ladonai. Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Ladonai. Naria, Naria, Letzu Yeshenu, Nikad Mavada Betoda. Naria, Naria, Letzu Yeshenu, Bizmirot Naria Lo. Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Ladonai. Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana, Ladonai. Page 131, Psalm 96. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai, Bachu Shemo, Bachru Miyom Leyom Yeshuato, Sapru Vagoyim Kevodo, Bechol Ha'amim Niflotav, Ki Gadol Adonai, Hulam Me'od, Norachum, Al Ko Elohim, Yoy, Yoy, Yoy. La la la, yambai la la la, yambai la la la, yanda la 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 la, yalla la la la, yambai la la la, yalla la la, yada da 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 da, yalla la 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 la, yambai yambai bye bye, yada da da da, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la la la. On page 136, we continue with Psalm 29, Mizmor LeDavid.
Mizmor LeDavid, Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Havu l'Adonai, Kavod va'od, loi, 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 Havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, Ishtachavu l'Adonai b'chadra kodesh, Kol Adonai amayim, El hakavod kirim, Adonai amayim rabim, Kol Adonai, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, vayashaber Adonai et arzei halbanon, vayarkideim kemo egel Lebanon, vesiron kemo ben reini. Kol Adonai chotze Yaseh lachol esh, kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, kol Adonai yecholel ayalot, v'yechesov yeharot uvhechalot. Kulo merkavod, doi 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 Adonai, lamabul yoshev, yoshev Adonai, melech le'olam, Adonai oz le'moiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. We turn to the next page, Lechadodi. We sang earlier the Bialik's version of it, of the welcoming the bride as the Sabbath queen, welcoming the Sabbath as the Sabbath bride. So Lechadodi likrat kala, Lechadodi likrat kala. Pene Shabbat nekabala, Shama v'zachor b'riborecha, Tishmiyanu el hamyuchad Adonai echad, U'shamo echad l'shem u'tiferet, V'hila lechadodi likrat kala, Pene Shabbat nekabala, Likrat Shabbat lechuvanecha, Ki mekor habracha merosh mikedem, Nesucha sof ma'aseh, V'machshavat tchila lechadodi likrat kala, Pene Shabbat nekabala.
Verse 5.
Hitori kira ore, Kumi ori uri uri, Shir daberi kavod Adonai, Alayich nigla lechadodi likrat kala, Pene Shabbat nekabala. If you're able, you rise and you face to the entrance and you just imagine the bride coming through, or the Sabbath queen as we sing. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvtona tochem unei am segula boi kala lechadodi likrat kala Pene Shabbat lechadodi likrat kala Pene Shabbat nekaberam. So if you're still standing, you can look over to, if there's someone that you're near, and you can wish them a Shabbat Shalom. You can go, Shabbat Shalom. And if they're online, you can give them a wave as well. We have Lisa Thorner here. So Shabbat Shalom, Lisa.
Shalom, Lisa.
Okay, so let's turn to the very next page. Psalm 92. It's a special psalm that we sing on Shabbat. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat.
Mizmor shir leyom HaShabbat, Tov lechodot l'Adonai, U'lezamer l'shimcha elyon, U'lezamer l'shimcha elyon. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון. So look at the text. We're on page 140. So 4 lines up, you see the words Magadlu Ma'asecha Adonai. We're going to read that as Magadlu Ma'asecha Yah. Made reference earlier to the Yud Hey, that reference to Adonai. Now it's a slow melody, sort of a softer. It's not like the la 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 that we've been doing up to this point. Because Shabbat Menucha, at some point you got to take a little rest. You got to take that breath in. And so to really connect with your spirit, you have to get in tune with your breathing, with all that's going on in this world, and sit back a little bit. So we'll sing this nice and slow and soft. Magadlu Ma'asechaya Me'odam Kumachavotecha
מחשבותיך. Again. מה גדלו מעשיך מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מה גדלו מעשיך מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. God told us to build a mishkan, told us to asuli mishkan v'shachanti betocham. Build me a place and I'll be there with you. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But our prayers also remind us that entrances to holiness are everywhere. The makomot, in all places. The possibility of ascent is all the time. Even at unlikely times and through unlikely places, there is no place on earth without the presence.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba.
Amen.
Ba'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich machutei.
V'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael. Ba'agala, ba'agala, ubizman kariv. Amen. Yeshmei Rabba mevarach, le'alam olam me'almaya, yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal, shemedu kedashah
Barichu.
le'ela min kol bechata v'shirata,
Dush bechata v'nechemata da'amiram be'almam.
v'meru.
Amen. We rise for the call to worship, page 146. Yum ba da la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, yum ba da la la, ya da la 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 la, ya la la ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Vayed. HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Vayed.
On page 148, we join together. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzebaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael, amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbeinu u'vkumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha. V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'b'mitzvotecha, la'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו.
אוהב עמו ישראל.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Please be seated. We continue together on page 154, chanting the words of the Haftarah. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. On page 157, on this Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of Remembrance, we remember that the world is not yet a perfect place, that there's still a lot of work for all of us to do. So we read responsively at the bottom of the page, hoping that our efforts will bring redemption to our world. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. What they sing?
They sang Mechamocha.
That's a
So
good one.
shall we?
That's a good one.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei felem, nora tehilot osei felem.
מלכותך רבובנך בוקע היום לפני משה ומרים זה לי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch Shemo.
קהל ישראל.
Amen. So we live in this very secure country. And now we, of course, focus on all the divisions and the inequities and the problems that we have. Okay, it's right. We should recognize them, address them, and hopefully fix them. But we live in relative security compared to anybody else who lives anywhere else in this world. And we can go to bed and knowing that we have no one rampaging through our homes and who will round us up and take us to camps. We've been through that time. We've seen that time. And that's part of what the Shabbat Zachor is. There were in those days, and there are in our days, people, terrorist groups, people bent with and filled with the rage of bigotry and racism who are attacking people around the world and who do not have a community to stand up and say no and fight back. And so that last line that Susan's saying, it says, Ugalo meyel chazak mimenu, God, help us survive against those who are stronger than us. And now sometimes these vigilantes or these mobs are armed, and they certainly make a family, a community feel very vulnerable. We've been there too. Certainly Hadassah, Esther, she saw that in her community. This next prayer, the Hashkivenu prayer, again, we think, oh, it's such a sweet melody and all the rest. It's lovely to have a sweet melody. But the sentiment is so real. That is, God, I want to be able to go to bed when my loved ones to be able to sleep with rest, with security. Let us never take for granted that there are men and women who are out there who are protecting us, that we have a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, with all of its problems, and that we can count the safety and the security of our family, our loved ones, our neighbors as one of the blessings, but we should never take it for granted. So we read, grant us, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, O guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, and for your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Together, blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah, atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'akol amo Yisrael. Al Yerushalayim ve'akol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah, atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'akol amo Yisrael. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam b'rit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. 164, we rise, we'll chant together the Avot, the Gevorot, and Kedusha, the first prayers of the Amidah, and then we'll continue silently. If you're able, please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach, Ufi yagi tekilatechem. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu be'imoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Chanara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Gonei Hakol V'Zocher Chastei Avod V'Imachol U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'Nechem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Saram אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב לא הושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה לחיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יללוך הסלע ברוך אתה אדוני Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue silently.
Iule ratzon imre pi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'gali Adonai tzuri v'gali.
Would you please turn in your prayer books to page 371, and we'll find the words of healing. Later on this week, on Thursday morning at 11, we'll gather and we'll have our weekly healing service. And we'll read these names, and everyone else is welcome there. You'll be able to share some personal thoughts and hopes. On this Shabbat, I've been thinking of a lot of different people. There's some who are not on this list, of course, and perhaps I know some are flashing their names on the computer. And of course, that is another way of letting people know. Unfortunately, it's so limited to be able to visit people in a hospital or visit them even at home, although I am making those visits when I can. But again, it has to be arranged ahead of time with the families. So at least we can make a phone call, and I did today. It's a wonderful family, and they were able to hold up a phone to a loved one, and we were able to sing prayers of healing, this prayer of healing actually. And it's just a reminder to those of our loved ones who are feeling isolated that we're still here for them. And so as you hear these names and as we sing these prayers of healing, Remind the people in your life who are struggling that they're not alone, that there is hope, and that there's love. I think tonight of Ryan Alpert, Mike Babbage, Stan and Sandra Bauer, Andy Bean, Emily Bellistock, Samantha Bernstein, Paul Bonilla, Steve Bokum, Arlene and Sidney Brandt, Harold Cohen, Joseph Michael Connor, Cindy Coons, Frank and Aaron DeSena, Jay Dworkin, Marty Einhorn, Ron Epstein, Ellen Falk, Stan Farber, Jack Fisher, Dorothea Flax, Kelly Gates, Morris Ginsburg, Wendy Glasser, Marlene Gottleman, Marcia Gold, Ellen and Erica Gulnick, Cheryl Goodman, Lois Haas, Jerry Hart, Miriam Hoopman, Cassidy Apinick, Oliver Jack, Marilyn Jordan, Stephen Kofler, Lori Lavenhar, Fred and Judy Lazar, Audrey and Larry Lazar, Adrian Levy, Juanita Lorenenko, Dina Marks, Mary Ann May, Hugh Miles, Nevitt Montgomery, Diane Cushman-Neal, Rafael Ben Ruven Ufega, Bernie Rogoff, Alan Rosenberg, Donna Santanisavan, Diana Sevilla, Brad Schneider, John Schuler, Ed Schultz, Daniel and Callista Schwartz, Roz Schwartz, Doris Schwartzberg, Norm Sheldon, Joshua Singer, Carol Snoddy, Mark Sorkin, Sheldon Sperling, Ed Steinberg, Betty Stone, Barbara Susan, Yona Victor, Marlene Waldbaum, Jim Walker, Valerie Wasserman, Dorothy Whitty, Jill Witchlands, Esther Jenkinson, Aidan Zenon, and Shauna Zucker. We think of them along with all the others who are mentioned on the computer, and we sing this prayer of healing as we sing. Mi shebeirach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. So as Susan's about to read this special message about Shabbat Zachor and Hadassah, I just want to give a little preface. It comes from Shelley Cohen, longtime Temple Sinai member and beloved wife of Jeff, and she is a lifetime a lifetime Hadassah member. Now there's two Hadassah chapters. We have the Denver chapter and the Leah chapter, and they have combined forces to have all kinds of wonderful programs. And if you look online, the Denver and Leah chapters, they have a lot of programs going on, a lot of opportunities to get involved. So thank you, Shelley, for putting this together, and thank you to all the members of Hadassah now and the future members who are providing all those programs, providing all the services, raising funds for education, for health, etc.
And since it is Shabbat Zachor, we also have to look back at those past members who paved the way for those of us who are current members. I remember when I was a little girl, my mom would disappear once a month to go to these meetings, Hadassah meetings, and I was not allowed to go until I was in high school. And it was a really special event when I was there. But what's really neat is that I still have from our local chapter, it was Passaic Clifton in New Jersey, I have the cookbook, and it's got the best hamantashen recipe ever. Still use it. This was written by Shelley Cohen. Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization of America, has created an annual Hadassah Shabbat to be held on the Shabbat preceding Purim, Shabbat Zachor. Shabbat Zachor holds particular importance as Hadassah was founded during Purim and was Esther's Hebrew name. On Shabbat Zachor, we note that evil can be transformed into good, focusing on the victory of the Israelites over Amalek and of two strong women, Esther and Vashti, over oppression and discrimination. Hadassah was founded in 1912 by Henrietta Zold and 6 other women. Henrietta was a woman of vision, a Jewish scholar, an activist, and a Zionist. No one could have imagined that from humble beginnings, Hadassah would grow to include 2 hospitals in Israel that treat over 1 million patients a year, or that Hadassah would become the 2nd largest employer in the state of Israel. Hadassah Medical Organization contributes extraordinary medical advances and disaster relief all around the world, receiving over 300 grants a year to conduct medical research. Hadassah is a global leader in emergency trauma care and pioneers cutting-edge treatments for heart disease, cancer, and other life-threatening conditions. Hadassah globally promotes health and education and provides quality health care for all people in the state of Israel. Hadassah's original building was completed in 1964 in Jerusalem and needs major renovation. When COVID hit, Hadassah quickly reconfigured several floors to house COVID patients who ranged from mildly ill to those requiring a fully equipped ICU. It took Hadassah just 2 weeks to complete the first COVID ICU. Having a building exclusively dedicated to COVID helps keep the rest of the hospital patients and staff safe from the virus. Hadassah also supports 2 youth villages for children at risk, sponsors Young Judea, which encourages American youth to embrace Zionism and Jewish life. Hadassah is also deeply involved with lobbying Congress regarding women's health care and gender equality in medicine. Hadassah played a major role in Congress's passing the Never Again Education Act. The Talmud says, to save a single life is as if you have saved the whole world. Hadassah saves many lives every single day. For more information about Hadassah, you can check out their website online, www.hadassah.org.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Shelley, for putting that together. I wanted to just have a few words. This is Shabbat Zachor, Shabbat Truma. And in the Torah portion, chapter 25 of the book of Exodus and following, we find something quite unique. Now, the first part of the book of Exodus dealt with our struggle with slavery in Egypt and then our redemption from slavery, crossing the Sea of Reed, got all the way to Mount Sinai. There we had the revelation of the 10 Commandments. That was in Parashat Yitro 2 weeks ago. Last week we had Mishpatim, more laws, more commandments given to the children of Israel. We started to develop a sense of society and community. In this week, however, Terumah, it refers to gifts. You shall bring these gifts, these offerings. Why? So that Va'asulig Mikdash v'shechanti b'tocham, build for me a sanctuary, and that I might dwell in your midst. So we move from the redemption of our people from slavery into the giving of the laws to the creation of a place for worship. Asuli Mikdash, make for me a sanctuary or a tabernacle. Now, you might think about it, wait a minute, why did we have to have that commandment? Didn't Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel and Leah, didn't they have a temple? Didn't they have a sanctuary? Did not they have a tabernacle? The question is, the answer is no, they didn't. Where would they worship? They would worship wherever they wanted. They would build an altar and they would have a celebration and give a thanksgiving to God wherever they were. Mikomot in all of the different places they were, which is perfect because God, one of God's names, and we, as I mentioned earlier, we have God as Adonai, we have God as El, God as Elohim, God as El Shaddai, but one of the names is God called Hamakom, God who is in every place, right? So they felt wherever they were, that was enough. But consider the patriarchs, they had small little families. It was not even a large tribe, it was just their family. But after the centuries passed and we now came out of Egypt, we were as large as a nation, many different families making up many different tribes, and we all came together and we could find a place of individual worship, which is perfectly fine, but we also desired a place where we could come together and congregate into a congregation of families. And that's a magnificent gift that we gave to each other and that the Torah commanded us. This desire to have a place where we could come and worship. And then we pause and we think, wait a minute. Okay, it's one thing to have a place to worship, but it says, V'shechanti b'tocham, make for me a place that I, God, might dwell among you. So when we build a sanctuary, build a beautiful chapel like this, is this for God to live in, right? How could God live in just this kind of place when the whole world is filled with God? And that's exactly the sentiment that King Solomon expressed when he first built the temple in Jerusalem. Now, King Solomon, of course, was the son of King David. King David created Jerusalem as the capital, but did not build the temple. It was for King Solomon, his son, to build the temple. And when they finally had it finished, they had an 8-day celebration, a Chanukah Bayit, a dedication of the new temple. We have a Chanukah Bayit, by the way, whenever we come to a person's home and we put up a mezuzah. So Solomon had a celebration, but he did more than just put up a mezuzah. He had this whole temple built, right, for 8 days over the festival of Sukkot, right? So that's why it was an 8-day celebration. And it brought all the tribes together, almost representatives from almost every family and clan to come into Jerusalem so that they could all make offerings, and they had celebrations, and they had, as you can imagine, a couple of speeches. And at the conclusion of it, Solomon made the following declaration that I think is very surprising and very true. Solomon looked out with all humility at the crowd of people there, and he says, after the temple, everyone say, wow, how beautiful the temple is. And this is the place where V'shechanti b'tocham, where God said, I will dwell here. And Solomon said, but will God really dwell on earth? Hamumnam yoshev Elohim al haaretz. Can God dwell here? Even the heavens to the uttermost reaches of heaven cannot contain you, O God. How much less this house, this bayit, this mikdash, this sanctuary, this temple that I built for you. So Solomon, in all humility, realized, and wanted the people to realize, that God's not contained in the temple. There's a wonderful midrash that says, you know, a temple, a sanctuary, a chapel is like a cave by the sea. Yes, it is filled with God's Spirit, just as the ocean comes into that cave and fills it up with water. But just as that cave is filled up with water, the ocean is no way diminished with its strength and volume. It is simply filling up that space because we have so designated it. That is what a chapel is, a sanctuary is. We build it, and God fills it, not to diminish, not to inhibit, but rather to remind us that God is in our midst. V'asuli mikdash v'shechanti b'tocham. God, you've asked us, you've commanded us to build holy places that we can come together and feel that presence, knowing that you are everywhere, but knowing even more that we feel the power of that Spirit when we are together. When we're not alone. Alone I can feel with God, true. Alone I can pray. Alone I can study. But it's missing a whole element. It's missing that energy, that hope, that awareness of the sacredness of people and things around me. All alone, I'm thinking all about myself. All alone, I'm obsessing about my needs, my life. When I'm with my family, when I'm with my friends, when I'm with my community, when I'm with a gathering of people, many I know and many are new, I'm aware of the sacredness, the struggle, the success, the celebration, the anxiety, all of those things mixed up into one, represented by one, by another, by community, together. And it opens my perspective to see God truly is makomot in all different places, but especially here. That's a lesson that we've been focusing on so much because we've had this isolation. We've had this separation. We feel this sense of being alone and of loneliness during this 12 months of a COVID pandemic. And we want so desperately to be able to come back. But even when we do come back, what will it be like? Of course, we'll be wearing a mask perhaps. And will we be able to come in with the same numbers? Certainly not right away. But eventually we will. Baby steps at first. But I know when I've been sharing the findings of our COVID committee that said already in March, we'll start having people back here in this Abrams Chapel and back in the Zwerin Sanctuary, and we'll take reservations and we'll keep our distance. If people will be welcome back, we'll still do the broadcast for those who are not ready and not able yet to come in. But we are starting to fill again this mikdash, this sacred place, this holy place, because we need a place. We need a sanctuary, a temple, a synagogue, in order to honor and celebrate God's blessings and the sacred spirit that animates life, that we can fully be aware of God's presence. We need a place where we can support and collectively reinforce our commitment to the sacred all around us. Alone and left to our own devices, we sometimes feel so isolated and have despair. But when we come together, we can see the divine in others and all around us. When we come to an honored sacred place like a synagogue, we are reminded that we are a part of a continuum of the brit, of the covenant that united our ancestors and helped us persevere. Persevere against the Amalek, persevere against the Hamans, persevere against all of the anti-Semites throughout the generations. And when we see our friends again and our loved ones again worshiping here in this synagogue, we will celebrate the fact that God truly does dwell among us. On this Shabbat Zachor, the Sabbath of Remembrance, as we remember the heroism of our ancestors, let us also remember what we mean to each other. So I wanted to get to that Shabbat Zachor, that sense of remembrance. And Susan and I took the boys a long time ago off Broadway to see the Fantastics. Now, you know, the best song in the Fantastics, which ran for like ever, was Remember. And so we played around a little bit with the lyrics. So here's what we got. To remember the time through COVID, remember this time here at Temple Sinai. Try to remember those days of our journey. The Israelites were famished and weary. Try to remember their fears of leaving Egypt when they reached the land God promised. Try to remember the fright that they faced when Amalek rampaged, besieging our people. On Shabbat Zachor, we remember to blot out the memory
of Amalek, no tishkach, don't forget.
Try to remember those days pre-COVID when shuls and gyms and schools were open. Try to remember the whir of activity at Temple Sinai. So many people. We yearn for the time when we'll be back together to pray, to learn, to schmooze together. On Shabbat Zachor we remember to think of the future.
Have some hope.
Try to remember, and we will get back together. Let us continue with Aleinu. We're on page 586. If you're able, please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol latet gilal yatzeh breshit shalo asana kigoei haratzon velo samanu kimishpachot ha'adama shalo sam chelkeinu kachem וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלכי המלאכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. Please be seated for just a few moments. We're going to read, of course, the Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, in memory and in honor of the memory of our loved ones who have passed away. The Kaddish is on page 598. And we think on this Shabbat, in particular, those who have died in recent days. Within the last 30 days, we've lost Lois Dorothy Goldberg, the mother of Karen and Dr. Jeffrey Galenkin, the grandmother of Noah and Lila and the late Zachary. Judy Landsberg Losher was the sister of Andy Ferlina and the aunt of Abby. We also mourning Terry Rosenfeld, the sister-in-law of Dr. Edward and Debbie Rosenfeld, and of Shari Roth, the sister of Andy and Cindy Pollitt. Alan Stephen Saltzman passed away. He's the father of Beth and Jason Osseline and the grandfather of Emma and Maya. And Ed Stoddard, the father of Rachel and Dr. Michael Anger, grandfather of Matthew, Eric, Emily, and Max. And at this season in years past, the yard sites were acknowledged, and we think of Gordon Balter, Vivian Becker, Manuel Berry, Harold Buxbaum, Virginia Clifton, Robert Cohen, Eileen Cohn, Joseph Logan Crane, Thelma Danches, Irv Dubinsky, Muriel Fendel, Frederick Howard Fogel, Jeannie Frank, Florence Galperin, Martha Galperin, Paul Goldfarb Sr., Stephen Grousman, Theodore Grunwald, William Herman, Bella Kay, Rebecca Keel, Marge Kleinman, Edmundo Kugelmas, Norman Landsberg, Sue Lowenstein, Joseph Margolin, Lillian Maslin, William Maslin, Dolores Ostrin, Ben Perlmutter, Mark Pollitt, Rosalind Poppers, Simon Rifkin, Rebecca Roseberger, Gertrude Rosenthal, Miriam Ross, Arlene Ruby Leviton, Rosalind Sadwith, Alexander Sanders, Pauline Schlesinger, Sterling, Jean Spitalnik, Rose Steinberg, George Steen, Esther Sunshine, William Susan, Adolf Tarl, Donald Tennant, Jean Warshawski, Lillian Wedgel, Leonard Weiner, David Weinstein, Saul Witkin, Sidney Wolf, Abraham Wolpo, Sanford Zaz, and Georgia Zebrowitz. We think of them and we say, Zichronam livracha. May their memory be for us a blessing, and we honor them by reciting the Mourner's Kaddish as we say. If you can, please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma devarach rotei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomei achon, v'chayedecho be'Israel, Bagala Vizman Karib Imru Amen. Yeshmei Rabbam Mevarach Leolam Olamei Almaya. Yitbarak V'yishtabach, Yitpa'ar V'tromam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh, V'yitalal Shemei D'Kodisha Baruchu, Le'elam Min Kol Berchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechamata, Da'amiram Be'alma V'imru Amen. Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu, V'al Yisrael, V'imru Amen. Osei Shalom B'mromav, Hu Ya'asei Shalom. Aleinu V'al Yisrael, V'imru Amen. The source of peace, and peace to all who mourn, and comfort to those who are bereaved, and we say Amen.
Amen.
So again, please be seated for just a couple minutes. I want to make a few announcements. Tomorrow morning, the service is at 9 o'clock. It's not too late to tune in to take advantage of the Spike concert that we're going to have. Temple Sinai has this wonderful artist who's going to be singing, and it's available online, of course. All you have to do is look at the daily docket and the snippets and plug in. It's at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock tomorrow, and it concludes where Spike and Yolis will help with a little Havdalah. So that's lovely, lovely way to complete Shabbat tomorrow. On Sunday, I have Sinai Sundays at 9:30, and we have tons of people who are joining us every week. So, but if you haven't done it, tune in. Why not? We're doing stories of the Talmud, and each week it's different stories. I want to make sure that we have a couple other things mentioned. Of course, on Tuesday I have my Parashat Shavua class. On Wednesday night we have lifelong Jewish learning, and that is at 6:30, and it's about the transgender people, and it's wonderful, so tune in. All of these programs are, of course, highlighted daily. Yoni puts out this daily docket, right? So scroll down, and then it says, look for more. Yeah, press that, because there's all kinds of things on there. That gives you the hyperlinks. All you have to do is click onto it, and there you go. And it's wonderful either to study together, to worship together, to have these wonderful programs so we can, now, of course, it's better one day when we get back here, but it's not bad to be able to join wherever you are. So right after this service, we're going to tune on also to the Shmooze. If you want to join us just to say a little hello, that'd be nice. And unfortunately, we don't have an oneg right now, so we've got plenty of herring waiting in the fridge for when you do come back. So with that, we have our Kiddush. So pour a little bit of a cup. Vaye'er vayevolker yom hashishi, vayechulu hashamayim v'yaret, v'chol tzevahem, vayechel Elohim b'yom hashvi melachto asher asa, vayishbot b'yom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי וקדש אותו, כי בו שבה מקום מלאכתו, אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגופן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קדשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה ורצון הנחלנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. לחיים. Ooh, that's good. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol
Yisrael,
V'imro amen. Ya'aseh shalom, Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Adonai oz moyetim, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. May God grant each of you that strength to remember, that strength to recover, that strength to reunite, that strength to love. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Lisa.